Actually here. I'm actually surrounded by people who are in management positions. And I have to say, I was here since 11, and I came here hoping to hear a certain kind of discussion going on. And I'm not surprised that I'm disappointed that it didn't take place. This is supposed to be a transformation seminar of some kind. Yet, we have a colloquial term our students like to use to describe what has been going on. It's called dick riding. It's basically like a eulogy at a funeral, where you talk all about the good things and never ever talk about the bad things. And you forget about the core of what it is that you're supposed to be talking about. And this is what all of this is. And it's explaining to me just how bad things are at this university. It's showing me the dissonance between management and the purpose of a university. Because from what I've heard so far, I can say this: you as management have forgotten your raison d'etre, your reason to be, why you are here, why the university space is here. Do any of you even know what a university is for? Do you? It's a serious question. Do any of you actually know? I mean, you're the former vice chancellor. Do you even know what a university is for? We've been talking about, colleague. Please wait. We've been talking about transformation, talking about changing faculties, but haven't talked about why there've been these changes.
Thank you so much.
Talking about why there've been these changes, why they've been needed.
I think you have made your point, and I think it's well taken. And in an academic forum, a critical stance is important. But there is a purpose for this particular series of sessions. And if you were here earlier when Prof. Botgita had introduced, this is part of a range of seminars. I'm sure that we will be more than happy to share with you. The transformation is not a once-off session that is happening today. It is the seminars regularly happening, and we are happy to put together a panel or help the student body engage critically on the issues you've raised. But I'm sure that the panel will respond as well. Let's take one more question, and then we'll have the panel just share their opinions, and we'll get back to the discussion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Where I come from, we stand when we speak, so allow me to do that. I think the colleague is in the wrong seminar. Let's start that. I'm not an academic. I'm a former radical student leader. And I appointed Professor Makgoba. And he has alluded to that on how we had to convince him to lead this institution 12 years ago. I must indicate I did graduate. We normally take long as student leaders. I have a postgraduate qualification. And thanks, Prof, for all the support. I can confirm, yes, I'm a millionaire today because of your support. And I contribute to the institution without fail every year. I think I want to deviate from what everybody has said, because we must not, as much as this is about what Professor Makgoba has done as an individual, his contribution has done. I think it will only be fair that also in his response, he indicates both on the hostility and the environment that made it possible. Because you don't come in as he's not a transformation machine. You know, MRC transformed, UKZN transformed. I think he needs to indicate, especially because we have a new vice chancellor here, that I happen to be his employer now. I'm a council member now. to say that these are the possible speed humps you'll come across. These are the possible speed humps I came across. And therefore, what makes it possible to transform? In my case, this was the strategy. Because if the environment was hostile, not that it wasn't, it therefore meant that there were other things and other role players in the form of students, in the form of workers, union, academic, and non-academic staff that made that possible. And I think that it is only fair that we take the discussion further to say what made it possible in that sense. In conclusion, Chair, before you tell me to sit down, when Professor Makgoba was appointed, and I think somebody alluded to that, I've never told him that, we're very worried. You know, we see vice chancellors as politicians. That's us as student leaders. So we always want them to be biased, understanding that we see that as transformation. And to have a medical doctor leading an institution, we see that as it's like a mixed match in terms of skills. And we had those fears. And I think that he has been able to overcome those fears in terms of his continuous engagement, consultation, and able to differ with us where he had to, because he had to manage. And as students will always want free education, free access, possibly pass one, pass all, and all that. So he has been able to manage all those contradictions, but understood that he's leading a platform that is a battle of ideas, that is a contested terrain. And we wish him well, and we wish that those who led with him learn something from him, and will carry it forward with Mr. Van Jasveld that I happen to employ as we go forward. Thanks, Chair.
So if you didn't know who has real power in the university, now you know. So can please have the panel members who would just want to share some reflections and respond? Prof?
I suppose in this one day, it's snippets of a very long and important and complex legacy that Professor Makgoba has left and I think that will be the subject of scholarship and research and understanding. We've not talked about, it is true, we've not talked about the many student issues, we've not talked about the whole Senate issue of how the Senate had to be transformed and issues of academic freedom and so on. Those stories have not yet been told. So I think there are many untold stories here. Just to say, it's simply a selection, a recognition, I think, of an enormous contribution that is made. And I think for me, the important thing is sharing the learning from that. So, so I think it's an incomplete story, for now at least.
We'll take the next round of comments and Prof, I keep losing the person with the mic. Oh, found it.
Thank you. Mine are just two comments for what they're worth. Firstly, a response to Nico and Professor Descartes about their comments about the old University of Natal. I don't know if you've read the recent novel by Imran Kovadia, the well-known South African writer from UCT. And he sets this novel in Durban and depicts the institution of the University of Natal. And he calls it the Free University at Howard College. You can make your deductions from that. Incidentally, he does do a wonderful depiction of Rick Turner, a character who reflects the life of Rick Turner. And if ever we do have a TRC for activists in higher education, there would be many stories that are left untold that need to be told. The other is to just add, for what it's worth, given that we're looking at the multiple identities that draw from the many histories of this institution. I studied myself at Salisbury Island, but I wanted to say that there are many other tributaries that came with a progressive bent to develop Salisbury Island into UDW, which then filtered into the new merged institution. And one of them, which I'd like to recognize is the progressive intellectuals who came from the University of Fort Hare. Among them was my late husband, but he wasn't alone. Among many others, they were instructed not to go back to Fort Hare, given the extension of the Universities Act, and to come to the College for Indians at Salisbury Island. But there was Professor Oosthuizen, Barathram, a whole host of them, who then began the transformation at Salisbury Island, and then it went on to UDW. And in many ways, that's something of the legacy as well. Thanks.
Anybody else? I'd just like to perhaps add that it was the merger of two already complicated, perhaps even confused institutions that were trying to find their own identities with internal dynamics. And I often, recently I've shared with Prof. Makgoba, I have no idea how he has done it. And Dr. Van Jaarsveld, I don't even know how you're going to do it, because it is very, very difficult. Sometimes I get emails as the dean, and I don't know how I'm expected to respond, because it is really, really enormously difficult when you have so many different interests and groups to deal with. Colleague?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Temban Kumalo. I'm also a student. Well, I agree with Prof. Vita that there are pockets of stories that are not told. And I also agree with the assertion that a lot has been done and it is visible to everyone, especially on the side of scholarly work. A lot has been done. It's someone who's, I don't know, how can I describe a person who might say things have not been improving? But with my background of being in a social science, cultural background, and also a background from the student leadership point of view, I think there are still pockets of things that need to be unlocked, which I would say the new Vice Chancellor will have to pay more attention to. I think in a side of inclusion and a side of cohesion among students, there's still a gap. I will make an example with how the student leadership is constructed. Year in and year out, there is a problem of women leadership. There is a problem of holistic view of student leadership in terms of demographics of our country. That is a problem that we need to face as the university, so that we reflect what the country is and what the country aspires to. And I will also give a tip to Dr. Jaarsveld, that part of what made Prof. Makgoba to achieve what he achieved. One day, we used to work together in one of the years. There are stories that he used to share with me and stories that we used to share. And I will also advise Dr. Jaarsveld that he must reduce time of sleeping. Because some of the time that when I was still working with Prof. Makgoba, you would have a problem at 3 a.m. And if you send an SMS or if you call, he will answer his phone. You have a problem at 9 a.m. in the same day, he will respond. Again, you will see him if you want to see him during the day. So he must actually reduce his sleeping time. 3 hours is enough. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very wise comments. But Dr. Van Jaarsveld is well trained. As the CEO of the NRF, academics kept calling him the entire night, and we are a bad bunch as well. Colleagues, I'm just going to give the panel, we've got 2 minutes left. Is there anybody, Prof, who wants to say something?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make a small contribution to what people are saying here. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier on, that we all have different backgrounds and they shape the way we operate. And I'll give you maybe 2 examples. Most medical doctors are trained not to become emotional about making decisions. You can imagine, I have to cut your leg. If I started thinking that, oh, this guy is gonna walk with one leg for the rest of your life, I may think differently. I just have to get the facts why I must remove your leg in your best interest. And this is a feature of medical people, that in order to achieve the best for a patient or for another person, you remove the emotions totally from your decision-making process. And of course, sometimes when you do that in a position where one is, people see that as being callous, or that you don't care, or you haven't considered things. It's just that it comes very strongly from that background, and I think a lawyer would handle that differently. So I think do bear that in mind all the time. I think it's also important, I think what Semi has said, yes, I can confirm that he employed me. And maybe he continues to be my boss. But he also didn't tell you that at one time or another, he called me at 4 o'clock in the morning, having eaten, I think he was having food poisoning, and said to me, come to my funeral, because if you don't assist me, you will never see me again. So there are other elements of our interaction with colleagues that look after us, and it's those kinds of elements that we often don't share, but they are very, very important, just as Tembani was saying about students. And I think I've also shared this in other platforms. The students in South Africa are very complex because they are following during a period of turmoil, coming from many social political backgrounds and so forth. And I think in this position, you have something generic, but there is also something specific that depends on your personality and I think your demeanor of handling people. And sometimes, of course, Tembani says that they would send me a message around 3 a.m. Remember that when a message comes around 3 a.m., I don't know whether I'm going to face a strike when I get into the university. So whether I like it or not, I had to wake up and at least read the message, because it may spell the end of my career as Vice Chancellor. So I need to be responsive. But all I'm saying is that I think there is more to this job, as Semi was trying to say, than simply what is technically written for a Vice Chancellor. A Vice Chancellor in South Africa, a Vice Chancellor at UKZN, it's not the same as a Vice Chancellor at UCT. I mean, I remember having a conversation with Max, outside the country, where we were both free to say what we want to say to each other. He said to me, frankly that, there is no challenge at UCT as a Vice Chancellor. I mean, that was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think he can say that today. But because, he said that he had inherited an institution that was stable and everybody knew the rules of the game and everybody was working. Of course, it was different here. And so I think what we're trying to do at the moment, we have an induction with Albert. We go around for him to listen to everybody, including students, say what they want to say. That is the side of the institutional intelligence that I think works for him, and he sees how people perceive and express themselves around issues of the institution. And I think from there, he will learn how he wants to do things. And finally, I have to say this, I learned early in my career, and I even learned this more when I was overseas. In South Africa, we think we can do everything. And let me give you an example. On Friday, we go and sit at the funeral vigils. Saturday, we go to a funeral. Sunday, we go to church, and possibly a political rally, and you speak there. And in every one of these things, you think you are an expert. And something suffers. You know, you are a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So part of the things I learned in my life was you cannot do everything for everybody. You must choose the few things that you can do and deliver on. It's often very hard because for the people you can't deliver, there is an emotional response that you get from them. But I have never seen people who are successful who are able to achieve things who do everything. Of course, as I say, when you make the choice, something suffers. You should tell yourself you live with the consequences of your choices and be responsible. You don't have to rubbish them, but certainly you can't do everything to everybody. And when I was at the NIH, working there in the research lab, on Saturdays I used to go to the liberation struggle, sort of like rallies. And my boss called me one day on Monday and said, on Saturdays you're not here in the lab. Where are you? So I said, no, I've gone to struggle meetings and so forth. And he said to me, your struggle is to get a Nobel Prize when you are here at the NIH. So, if you could just get that right, you'd be very different. And I said to him, I come from a different society. Here you've solved all your problems. I mean, I'm not saying you don't have problems, but here in the States you've solved all your problems. In my country, they're trying to solve a problem. And I'm here and I cannot not be part of them. I mean, he understood, but all I'm saying is that you learn in some society, they teach you how to focus. Not because you ignore everything, but because humanly possible, you can only do a few things. Here is the secret. When I first took this job, I asked myself, what is the focus of what I'm going to do? And that focus must be so simple such that nobody can baffle around it. And I identified research. I knew that no academic would stand up and argue against being research productive. Otherwise, everybody would laugh at them. Their peers would laugh at them. The country would laugh at them. And the question was, how was we going to do it? And that became the focus. And then everything else is secondary. So even Albert, he's not going to be able to do everything. Some people will love him, others won't love him. But he has to make those choices and live by them. That's my contribution.
Thank you. Lunch is waiting. In the same venue, enjoy. Oh, we will be back. Sorry, we will be back at 2 o'clock to start with the next session.
Thank you. I introduce you to Professor Christina Troy. She's the Dean and Head of School of Engineering.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Professor Makgoba, colleagues. It's really a pleasure, and thanks, Cheryl, for asking me. I feel that I am entitled to moderate one session. And the reason for that is that when I first came to South Africa over 15 years ago, and I joined the former Faculty of Engineering, Civil Engineering program at the University of Natal, I was the very first woman lecturer in the history of that university, of that faculty. In 2008, 2009, I was made the first associate professor in the history of Natal University. In 2009, I was the very first head of school of civil engineering of the history of the Faculty of Engineering at University of Natal. And then finally, in, actually KwaZulu-Natal back then, sorry. Then finally in 2012, I was made the first woman dean of the UKZN, the Faculty of the School of Engineering at UKZN. So in the history of the two universities combined. And with all due respect, I thought, well done, but you know what? It's very pathetic. If you think that we had to wait 122 years to have a woman dean of the faculty or the school now of engineering. So something needs to change, and needs to change pretty fast. We are very committed towards transformation and most of all gender equality with respect to technical professional degrees, and in fact across all